the consistent thing also is surrender. Like you surrender when you first realize you have a calling. You surrender when you get there. You surrender when you graduate. So it's like you're constantly just making space. Just like, and I think a lot of people go through the initiation process, but they don't get that part. That sometimes so we have very specific names, like the Lozi is the Lozi, and then you as a vessel, you're called Igojwana. So we often speak about Igojwana having to get out of the way so that the Lozi can do the work, which can seem difficult because it's like it's all one thing, but it's not. Like you are a vessel, and it is spiritual possession in the sense that there is an ancestor who was alive but no longer has capacity of a body and so inhibits yours. And yeah, you have to somehow like move away from your own body to allow this person to come forward, Do
you start doing that during the initiation period?
So, I mean, some people come having had that trouble, and it again also depends on your ancestor. So I consider my ancestor to be quite quiet.
Okay.
Because I went to initiation.
Quite a polite ancestor.
Yes. Right. She's like very subtle, but there would be people who were having like spiritual possession at home.
Before.
Yeah. Where the Lozi would just be like, screaming. And, people are like, what's wrong with this person?
Well, people
a lot of
probably
people
think you're crazy, right?
A lot of people do end up at Akeso or whatever in a mental health institution, anxiety, depression, schizophrenia are very common kind of diagnoses for people that do have ancestral callings.
Sure.
So she was very subtle, I didn't have that kind of thing. And I actually had to learn to invoke her, whereas other people's Lozis were just like popping out of their bodies, like everywhere, like, oh, why is my Lozi not acting like that? I was insecure for a bit. I was like, do I have a Lozi? Because I never scream for no reason. So I had to learn to invoke her, but she was present in many ways, and I had to learn how she is present and how her guidance comes forward. So I'm a dreamer. Not everybody's a dreamer, but I'm a dreamer, so my dreams are very important. And a lot of the communication and the guidance that I receive is through my dreams, and not always like the Lozi coming out to speak.
I mean, it makes so much sense for different ancestors to have different personalities because they're based on people who lived in the past, right?
Yes. And I think maybe that's also like the other misconception, particularly around like ancestors and African spirituality. These are people, this is a scientific fact, like these are people in your bloodline who came before you. That's it. I think people have this thing of like mystery and, woo-woo, but it's like, this is genetics.
Yeah, so the thing I was interested in researching this is concepts like genetic memory, generational trauma, epigenetics. Like these are things that science has been studying and, through scientific method have been, I mean, it's quite controversial. Some scientists do, do critique it and disagree with it, but that experiment they did with mice where they I can't remember what they did, but they like shocked the mouse or they did something to make the mouse afraid of something, and then they found that the mouse's children had that fear without ever experiencing that trauma. So that's the idea of intergenerational trauma. And I mean, in South Africa, I'd say it's pretty obvious that we all suffer from versions of generational trauma, given the history of our country. It's very popular in people speaking about the Holocaust and the Jewish community spreading into America. A lot of people understand that the depression and the anxiety that they're experiencing is partly because of memory in their body based on what their ancestors have been through. So the ancestral part of African spirituality, I think is scientifically feasible and validated.
I always say science is catching up to what our ancestors knew, right? And like I'm saying that I wouldn't be a Sangoma if there wasn't a Sangoma in my family. When people try to be like, God, this, what? I'm like, this is science. This is genetics. This is encodings in your DNA. Like, we don't have to debate it like that. It is what it is. And you don't birth yourself. You don't bring yourself into this place.
Yeah, you don't exist in a void.
Exactly. And the bloodline, you are along it. You are not the beginning or the end of the bloodline.
Yes.
And so, you're lucky if you're able to figure out what your purpose is in your bloodline, like what is your role, you know, and in the African kind of context, everybody has a role. Your grandmother has a role, your father has a role, your mother has a role, your aunt has a role, the older sister to your mother, the younger sister, all of those people have roles, you know. So it's like if you can identify that role, then you serve the purpose in your lineage, you know. But unfortunately for me, serving my purpose means that I needed to initiate to become a healer.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, fortunately, it's way more obvious. It's way more tangible. It's way more, you know. I imagine if the role is more vague, it's more difficult to find your purpose, to find where you fit in.
Yeah, true, definitely.
But I mean, not to reduce how intense it must be to shift your life.
You know.